Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Winner's Circle Sports Betting Podcast. I'm Ross Benjamin. As always, I'm joined by Las Vegas professional sports handicapper extraordinaire, Mr. Chip Chirimbes. Chipper, things you can't be any hotter than you are right now, my man.
Well, it was great last night going 3-0. The free pick even won 4-0, and the two games I passed won. So, when you're like this, you just say, oh boy, I hope it can last. But, not everyone wins every day, and I'm thankful for it. Ross, prior to this, I had told you in the 8 days, I had posted 7 days and gone 2-1, 7 straight days. I passed on Sunday because of the football and come back with a 3-0 yesterday. So I'm really happy about where we are with the college basketball right now.
Yeah, and I believe you're 21-8 with your last 29. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely right there. It's 72%. And, 30-game sample. Well, we've gone over 10 days. It's a 10-day period. So I hope to continue.
That's a tremendous run. And folks, for those of you looking today, by the way, today is our college football late week edition show. But for those of you looking for college basketball winners and like to play college basketball right now, Chip Chirimbes is absolutely on fire, 21-8 with his last 29, coming off a 3-0 sweep yesterday. You can get all his picks at chipwins.com. That's chipwins.com. Also, I'm going to have a 10-star top. I have a 10-star top play up tonight in college basketball as well. And you could purchase that by going to my website. That pick comes in the Texas Tech and Kansas game. And my website's rbwins.com, where my college basketball 10-star top plays are 9-2 in the last 11, folks. All right, let's get to the college football, Chipper.
Okay.
A lot of conference championship games on the slate. Some games that, again, we look at some of these lines that don't make sense to us. We're going to cover as much as we can in a short amount of time. And folks, hang around, because at the end of the show, we're both going to give you a college football free pick on Saturday's card. So let's start with tomorrow night, Chipper. There's 5 games on tap tomorrow in college football. A couple of interesting matchups. Let's start with the Conference USA Championship game between UAB and Marshall. A game probably won't garner a lot of attention, but right now, Marshall is a 5-point favorite. The total is 43. This is a Marshall team that was ranked in the top 25, had been undefeated, and inexplicably loses to Rice at home as a 20-point favorite in their previous game, 20-plus favorite in their previous game. And this is a good UAB team. They're battle-tested. They held themselves pretty well up in early in the year against Miami of Florida on the road. Any thoughts as to this game, and how do you approach this personally, Chip, when you see a team come off a bad loss like Marshall did?
Not only a bad loss, Ross, I think they got shut out. Am I correct?
Yes,
They
they did.
didn't score a point. And now they come up a meager 5.5-point favorite. So I would go back and check the schedule and the level of competition that they've played as the reason why they were undefeated at this point. We know UAB's played a pretty tough schedule. And I think for the most part, when I was just looking at the game and the matchups and the stats, that they run the ball. And they're looking to run the ball. And in today's day and age, I don't know if that's the way to go. But I think, Ross, this 5.5 might be telling. I mean, they're giving this team a chance to bounce back less than a touchdown. And, is this like the Pittsburgh Steelers? Is this the bang bang theory again, where a team loses the first one, they come back and don't, and just can't get their mojo up again because, well, their dreams of being undefeated or dreams of playing here or there are really dashed. And I'm wondering if that's the mental attitude that the Thundering Herd have coming into this one, because you and I both think a psychological approach to the game is more important than actually a physical approach, meaning the level of talent you may have.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's a good question, how tough their schedule was. I could tell you, besides UAB playing Miami of Florida, they're pretty comparable in strength of schedule.
Right.
Marshall, like you said, Chipper, they lost that game 20-0 to Rice. And to correct myself, Marshall was a 27.5-point favorite in that game. So, I mean, not only was it an upset, it was an embarrassing upset. And nobody saw that coming. first of all, Rice winning the game and winning it so decisively. So
Yeah.
we'll see how they respond. It's a good point. I mean, you're looking at it, the books are undeterred because they got them as a 5-point favorite in this spot. And that game will be played at Marshall. It's not at a neutral field.
Right.
So just keep that in
So
mind.
don't Ross,
Yeah.
don't you think the fact that Marshall's at home, that it's kind of a short line? I mean, are you trying to say on a neutral field between these two, they'd only be 1.5, 2-point favorites?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I think that if before last week's result came in, I would have thought the Marshall would have been a, 11, 12-point favorite
Exactly.
in this game.
Exactly.
So, yes, good point, Chip. All right, Nebraska and Rutgers, very interesting. This is a Nebraska team that's really struggled on the road this year, and Rutgers, with the exception of the one game they won on the road, Rutgers has turned it around under Greg Schiano. The Scarlet Knights are a 6.5-point to 7-point home underdog, depending on where you're looking. Boy, oh boy, this line, it's a little tricky because for whatever reason, the books think Nebraska's pretty good.
Yes,
based
they do.
on this line,
Yeah. And, I was like ships passing in the night last week. I passed on Rutgers beating Maryland outright, and I went with Nebraska, who got beat by Minnesota. So I'm like 0 for 2 coming in with these two games. But this number, like you said, and it's going up. I think it opened like 4.5, 5.5, and it's constantly rising here. And I think it's bookmakers sharp money coming in on them. Maybe Nebraska has played a lot, but they have played a lot better than their record indicates. And we know Rutgers has finally broke into the win column, particularly in the Big Ten. What were their beneficiaries of? What was it? 7 turnovers by Michigan State opening week, and no doubt they're better. No doubt they're better coached, and they're going to be more competitive as the years move on. But I'm wondering if the bookmaker is telling you right now, this is where it ends. You got to stop here. Your season's done.
You make a good point because Rutgers for the year is at a +2 turnover margin. But keep in mind, folks, like Chip just said, they forced 7 turnovers in the season opening win against Michigan State. On the other hand, Nebraska, you want to know why they're not much better than the record indicates? They're a -8 turnover differential. So again, it lends itself to what you said. This team, by the book standards and by what you just implied, Chip, is much better than the record indicates. Oregon and USC, this is an intriguing one. The game will be played at USC, the Pac-12 championship game, that is. Normally played at the home of the San Francisco 49ers, but we know the COVID-19 issues in the Bay Area won't permit anything from going on in a social manner. So the game has been moved to the home site, which is USC, the LA Coliseum. Oregon was not initially scheduled to play this game.
Right.
It's supposed to be the Washington Huskies. Oregon comes in 3-2, Chipper. USC 5-0. Yet USC opened at 3.5 and they're only 3. I got some thoughts on this. I want to hear what you have to say first.
Well, my first thoughts are, damn, why didn't you keep that originally scheduled game? Because I loved Colorado over Oregon. Not so much the USC Washington game. I mean, we had a play. We've had this happen to us 5, 6 weekends already this year where a top play has been eliminated. And I think after Colorado getting beat last week when we had Utah, I thought they were in a great bounce back position against an overrated team, Oregon. Now I got Oregon coming into this game as an underdog against a USC team that has no right to have won last week against UCLA. I think this is a hate bet. I'm mad at the Trojans. I'm so ticked off at that game.
I am too, buddy.
Hey, that's that stops you from having a great 4-2 day to going 3-3, and it's sickening the way we blow a 20-point lead, getting 3. Never mind, folks. What we have here is not a failure to communicate, but what we have is a great game between Oregon and USC. There should be plenty of scoring. What's the kid's name? Novus or Slovis for USC?
Yes,
Slovis. He's done a great job.
Yeah,
he's been great, but I think that number only being 3.5 here is telling you that USC maybe has been a bit of an imposter. They won the 2 opening weeks as huge favorites. I'm very lucky to get by Arizona, who we know is horrid. We played against them last week. They lost 70-7. So I don't. Maybe USC isn't as good as they appear, and their billing goes, and the whole Pac-12 overall has been pretty much weakened, not only by the virus but by their overall play, I would say.
Yeah, I mean USC's 5-0. They're playing at home. Oregon is 3-2. Underachieving this year. Maybe they were a bit overrated, like Chip just alluded to, as well. Okay, so you're telling me that if this game was played at Oregon, the Ducks would be a 3-point favorite as a 3-2 team against a 13th ranked USC team that's 5-0. To me, the books are giving you the winner here. I mean, the way I look at it, and USC, like you alluded to, they opened the year against Arizona State. They scored 2 touchdowns in the last minute of the game to win that contest as a double-digit favorite. And the last touchdown comes after they recover an onside kick. Then against a terrible Arizona team like Chip just touched upon, they needed a touchdown in the last minute to beat them. And then last week against UCLA, overcoming a 28-10 second half deficit and then winning the game in the final seconds. So this could be a team that we could very easily, Chip, without having some of the luck they had, be 2-3 right now instead of 5-0. So again,
the bookmaker believes that, Ross, because if they were 2-3, they'd probably be a 3-point favorite.
Exactly. So again, okay, let's move on. A game that we talked about, me and you talked about earlier this week. I'm not sure if we talked about it on our Monday edition, our early week edition of college football, but Air Force and Army. This is for the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. Both teams beat Navy, so they're 1-0. Whoever wins this game will have the honor of holding on to that trophy for at least another year. And Army coming off that decisive 15-0 win over Navy. And how do they respond after that, Chipper? I know they're playing another service academy, but you know as well as I do, the Army-Navy game is huge for both of those service academies. Well, it's not like they take Air Force lightly, but it does not have the tradition of Army versus Navy. Air Force has had a week off. Air Force has played a tougher schedule in the Mountain West. This game opened with Air Force being a 1.5-point favorite. They're up to 3, Chipper, but I'm seeing a lot of money go on the Falcons, so we're not fooling anybody here.
Yeah, and you said it. Their biggest game of the year is against Navy. They usually close the season that way and then maybe go to a bowl game. They played Navy last week. And do you know what their mantra was every time they had a meal at West Point this week? Before they eat, they chanted, "Beat Navy." Yep. They already beat Navy. This Air Force, I think, has got the big edge on them. A big edge psychologically. Their biggest game of the year is done, and they're still trying to beat Navy. Air Force is not their concern. I like the Flyboys here. I really do. And maybe I'm falling into line with the public and I'm being sucked in here. But I think also the telling tale is that you got a road favorite here. Army, this whole Army has played is it's
got a lot to do with it. And look at Navy. It wasn't the Navy we've seen in recent years. Okay, no. Navy they were suffered from a bad year. It started out with that blowout loss against BYU. They strung a couple wins together. They finished the year terribly. I think they scored 7 points or less in their last 3 games, including being shut out against Army. One thing I will tell you, folks, Army has gone under the total in 12 straight meetings against Navy. Army has also gone under the total in 6 straight meetings against Air Force. What's that tell me? Army and Air Force and Navy pretty familiar with each other, running the triple option attack. Yep. And those are low-scoring games. Having said that, this total opened at 38, and it's down to 37.5, and we're not even seeing totals that low in the NFL anymore, let alone college football. So they're not making it easy on you, although that game went under last week. It was 38, and it finished 15-0 Army. So
never threatened.
So, all right. So I'm going to skip by the next game, Minnesota and Wisconsin, because Chip's going to have a free pick on that later in the show. By the way, folks, hang around. We'll both have a free pick in college football on Saturday. at the end of the show. And if you haven't been following us, let me just tell you, our last 3 shows in which we've given out free picks were a combined 5-1, including 3-1 in college football and the NFL on Friday. And then we swept the board last night with a 2-0 between the two of us in college basketball. So we move on, and I could tell you I'm going to have a free pick in the Stanford and UCLA game. Another game of interest to me, and it doesn't have any conference championship implications nor major bowl implications, other than it looks to me like an interesting matchup. Let me just say that. Arizona State at Oregon State, Chipper. Arizona State is a 7-point road favorite against Oregon State. Arizona State coming off a massacre. I mean, a massacre of their in-state rival, Arizona, 70-7. Everybody's been singing their praises all week. They've been getting patted on the back all week, even with the social distancing. And what do you think of this contest? You got a 7-point road favorite in Arizona State at Oregon State.
I understand the bookmakers' logic. Here's a team that scored 70 points last week, dominated their rival. And, Arizona State's been a little overrated all season long. If you look at the kind of numbers you've seen posted by the bookmaker on them, they certainly favor the Sun Devils. Maybe it has to do with, is Herm Edwards their coach there?
Yes.
Maybe that
played 3 games, by the way.
Beg your pardon?
They only played 3 games so far.
But the first couple of games, I mean, weren't they inflated numbers, I thought. We had them as a best bet, and you had Oregon State against Oregon as a best bet. So we both should have pretty good feels on this game. I think that Arizona State, coming off beating their rival Arizona the way they did, may have a little problem getting ready to travel to Oregon and playing on the road here. They're in Corvallis, I think. I can see them struggling here, just off the fact that they won so big last week. They beat their rival last week, sort of like the Army situation. And I don't know if they're going to be ready, prepared for the Beavers.
Yeah, well, Oregon State 2-4 this year. Okay, and people will look at their record and say, the same old Oregon State. Actually, maybe they're a little better because they won 2 games. Well, I can tell you they're much better than they've been in recent seasons, Chip. And their 4 losses have come by an average of 6 points per contest. So in those losses, they've been right there. Nobody's beaten them by more than 10 points this year. They've been competitive. As Chip just brought to everybody's attention in the game I took Oregon State as a 13.5-point home dog against Oregon, and they won the game outright. So just keep all that in mind if you're handicapping this game, because sometimes it's not as easy as it looks. You have to look inside the numbers and not just the team's record. Northwestern and Ohio State for the Big Ten title. Boy, oh boy. We were talking about this, 19 point, they're down to minus 19 in one spot, still around 20 in most others, meaning Ohio State is a favorite. I just don't know how Northwestern can stay in this game, Chip. They're good enough defensively, but my concern with them is, even though Ohio State, this isn't one of their better defensive teams we've seen in recent years, it's still pretty good. And Northwestern, to me, struggles offensively.
Well, one thing I say about both these squads, they have balance on their offenses. And here's the difference. Ohio State passes for 270 yards and runs for 250. Northwestern passes for 178 and runs for 170. So the difference is 100 yards between the passing and running offenses. Ohio State has that big an advantage. Ross, I checked the matchups between these two, and I think Ohio State against the points against Northwestern has dominated for the most part, and they have dominated in this Big Ten championship game. And now you're telling me that the line is coming down. I had anticipating it getting higher because of the exact reason you just mentioned. Where are the points going to come for the Wildcats? Where are the big guns for Northwestern? They're going to have to control and sustain drives. They're going to have to control the ball and not put it into Ohio State's hands, because this Ohio State, they're scoring 45 points a game. So what are you going to do? How are you going to match that? I mean, if they score 21, they still don't cover that number.
Yeah. It's look, you look at the Big Ten, it's not been a great year for the Big Ten. I mean, you got a nice surprise story in Indiana. Wisconsin had a down year. Michigan had a down year. Michigan State had a down year. All the perennial powers in the Big Ten did not do very well. I would much rather see Ohio State playing Indiana again, but being in is they're in the same division of the Big Ten, that's not possible. But we'll see. You know what I mean? This looks to me like a blowout, but it scares me away when I see most of the money coming on Ohio State and the line not moving, Chip. So
Yeah.
again, we'll see. Oklahoma, number 10, and number 6, Iowa State, who all of a sudden is not only number 6 in the country, they're number 6 in the college football playoff poll. And
Really?
that's with 2 losses this year. So Oklahoma is going to be out for revenge. Iowa State beat them for the first time in over 3 decades at home earlier this season. 2 teams that are red hot right now. Oklahoma got off to that 1-2 start, and now I think they've won like 6 or 7 in a row, if I'm not mistaken. And their offense is really clicking on all cylinders. This game right now, you're looking at Oklahoma as a 6-point favorite, Chip.
Well, like I said, we're checking the matchups. Iowa State's only won the last time out, but has covered the last 5 meetings. Yeah. And so they're playing Oklahoma tough. You said they were ranked number 6 in the country, Ross, and you said Oklahoma's number 10. Yeah. And now the number 10 team is favored. Where is the site of this game exactly? I mean, it's not in Oklahoma's backyard, is it?
Yeah, let me take a look at that and if you want to entertain these people for
I could dance
as you very well can.
Well, telling the story about Michelle the toilet. I think Arlington, Texas. Okay, so no advantage anywhere there. But why would
is it being played in Arlington? Yes, in Dallas Cowboys Stadium.
Why would they be a 6-point favorite at a neutral site against a team that's ranked 6th and they're ranked 10th?
Yeah, I think you could have 20,000 people at that game, according to what the Dallas Cowboys have been doing in the state of Texas ordinance. I would venture to say that Oklahoma, it's going to be a heavy Oklahoma crowd because they travel very well. And again, not only are they number 6 in the country, they're number 6 in the college football playoff poll. And those guys are supposed to know what they're doing, but the books got them as a 6-point favorite. I don't know. I trust the books a lot more than the pollsters and them, those guys that get behind closed doors in the college football playoff system. So I would buyer beware if you're thinking you're getting a great price on the underdog here. Might be a game I just sit and watch, Chipper. Louisiana, Lafayette, and Coastal Carolina. This is interesting. Coastal Carolina, they needed a last second they scored a 23-yard touchdown pass with around 17 seconds to go as a double-digit favorite to pull out a 42-38 win at Troy last week. I guess it was expected, Chip, because they were coming off a big win against BYU in a battle of unbeatens. They're facing a Louisiana Lafayette team that's not too bad, folks. They're 9-1, and guess what? They're ranked number 19 in the country as well. And speaking of Iowa State, Louisiana Lafayette went to Ames, Iowa in a season opener and knocked off the Cyclones. So, and they played earlier this year in a game at Lafayette, and Coastal Carolina came away with a 30-27 win. Certainly looks like a good spot for revenge in the underdog here against the undefeated Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, I think they're called.
Chanticleers.
Yes. So anyway, what's your thoughts, Chipper?
Revenge is a great motivator here, and I think Lafayette's been to this championship game 3 years in a row, or at least the last 2, and lost to App State, and Appalachian State isn't there this year, so maybe they have a chance. The thing, you stole my thunder about them beating Iowa State. Now, Iowa State's the number 6 team in the country, and this team opened the season with a win over them. Their only losses to this Coastal Carolina. I think psychologically entering this game, that Lafayette has got to have been properly motivated and got to have the advantage. I mean, the way I see it. And who knows, what's going to happen, because this Coastal Carolina is a really good football team. And I was really impressed with their quarterback. I must say, after all this time.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give them a pass last week, right, Chip? I mean,
They
um,
won.
yeah, and they showed a lot of character because actually they fell behind with a little over a minute to go. And the quarterback that you're mentioning, his name escapes me at this present time,
Yeah,
unfortunately. But he drove him down the field for a winning touchdown in 40 seconds.
I know his
So
name, number 12.
anyway, yeah, going back to Louisiana Lafayette, they opened the year with a 31-14 win at Iowa State. They were a double-digit underdog in that game. Clemson in Notre Dame. Now, this really smells like a rat because here we have a Notre Dame team that knocked off Clemson early in the year in double overtime. And Clemson right now on a neutral field in Charlotte is a 10.5 point favorite now, Chipper, against undefeated Notre Dame. Boy, oh boy, if they cover the spread, Clemson means they're going to win somewhat decisively. What do? Do you leave Notre Dame out and move somebody else in? That's what scares me because you can't tell me that Notre Dame is not worthy of being in the top four, even if they lose this game.
Ross, we've been saying all year long that we thought they had reached the echelon. You know, they had reached that Clemson, Alabama level. They did beat Clemson, albeit without their quarterback. But what did the substitute do? He threw for 400 yards
Yeah, he
anyway.
threw for 439 yards. I mean,
So,
how
yeah.
much better could a Lawrence done in that game?
Now, you know, and I have been saying all along, Ross, that Notre Dame passes the eye test. Your boy Book has really
Yeah.
matured. Their receivers are big and strong, and they catch the ball, and that's really important in traffic. And when you have that kind of size, we really thought this was one of the better teams. That Clemson was the team that sort of wasn't getting there. Well, you know, Ross, I went back and I checked. You know, Clemson's averaging 46, 47 points a game. Maybe we were just expecting way too much from them, or maybe I was expecting too much from them when I was saying they just didn't pass the eye test. They just didn't pass the eye test. Well, if they win this game close, I think the committee really has some issues to have to deal with. But that number is outlandish because um, who's not going to gravitate toward the Irish here? You're going to give them double digits. They're undefeated. They already beat this team. A very tough call because I don't know if I could lay it, and I could bet the ugliest game, the ugliest team. It doesn't matter, but I don't know if I can take this one.
Right. And remember, Notre Dame is like the Yankees. It's like the Lakers in their heyday. Well, they're in their heyday now. They won a championship. People are going to bet them no matter what,
Yeah.
without considering anything else, right, Chip? So
Yeah, they're followers of it, and it's it's the way it is. It's always, since I was a kid, it was always how the Irish do, how Notre Dame would do, and they were always the lead. I mean,
yeah,
this team hasn't been a part of a football conglomerate. They independently controlled the football landscape by having their own TV network. They had, and if Madison Square Garden would fill up anytime their basketball team came in,
yeah.
and they weren't all drunken Irishmen. I'm just trying to say they were fighting Irishmen. They were the fighting Irish. They
Yes,
weren't the
they
drunk.
are fighting and drinking Irish.
We're not going to be
All
politically
one and the same, as far as I'm
The
concerned.
Cleveland baseball team has got a new nickname problem too now. So
Speaking of public sides, the Alabama Crimson Tide, the number one team in the country,
wow,
about as loyal a following as you can get anywhere.
yeah,
They're going to be playing the Florida Gators in the SEC title game, and this game isn't as big as everybody thought it was going to be last week, where Florida just dropped the ball, literally, Chipper.
yeah.
Losing as a 23-point home favorite to LSU, who went into that game with a 3-5 record. Florida right now, or Alabama, excuse me, they opened as a 15-point favorite. They're up to 17. That move was quite early, and it stayed pretty much the same throughout the week. Chip, your thoughts?
I really expected it to be 21 after that Florida loss. Florida lost to A&M, who we said we've been disappointed. Didn't think that they were passing the eye test either, and maybe they are better than we've given them credit for. But I don't like the Aggies anyway. But the Florida, how disappointing were they? I mean, were they looking ahead to this game?
You
It
think?
had to be, Ross. It had to be. And
Yeah.
I was surprised at this. I think the odds maker feels the same way. You said with this number at 17, Notre Dame, I mean, this Alabama team, I mean, even the game they didn't cover, they won by 24 points. So I think this is a really a low number, even for, I mean, Ohio State is 20 and a half over Northwestern. And I think there's a greater disparity here. And I'm surprised the line is at 17 and not at 20 and 21.
Well, think about this. You know what the total is in this game? 73 and a half. When was the last time you saw an Alabama total even close to that high?
Yeah.
This is
They got
where,
great offense.
this is
They
where
got
I
great talent.
stop to think, bud. Okay. And hear me out on this, Chipper.
Go ahead.
Makes any sense. Alabama has allowed 17 points or fewer in their last 5 games. You know, we talked about early in the year how the Alabama defense wasn't the Alabama defense of old, and they were going to have to outscore people like they did early on. But they really settled down over the last 5 games. And like I said, they're giving up somewhere around 10 points a game over their last 5. Yet the total is 73. What that tells me is the bookmakers respect Florida's ability to put up plenty of points, even against Alabama. And if that's the case, I got to think that favors Florida in the bookmakers' minds. You know, it's if they're going to have a total that high, and Alabama's been holding teams to that low an output scoring over a long period of time, like they have. They're depending on Florida to put up some serious numbers here offensively in this game.
Yeah.
And I got to believe that that bodes well for underdog value. I know you hate that word value, but does that make sense at all?
No, no, it absolutely does because we know Florida can score. I mean, they scored last week in their loss. You know, like I said, if they weren't focused last week, they weren't focused. But I think they're going to be focused this week. And I know that Alabama offense, that juggernaut, such team speed. I mean, they lost their fastest guy, and they still have the 2 fastest receivers in college football. This Matt Jones is a #1 pick. We've talked about that. Is Jones his last name?
Yes.
Okay.
You can't
But their running game is as solid as can be, and they've got great balance this year. And the only thing that can mess it up is Lou Saban panicking in the second period.
Lou Saban, Nick Saban. Lou Saban, the former Buffalo Bills head coach, Miami of
Suicidal head coach.
he was a vagabond. He was a head coach everywhere, for crying out loud.
You gotta do it, boys.
Why do we do that to ourselves? Anyway, all right, let's get to our free pick, Chip, because we're running low on time here. Let's start with you. Go ahead, Minnesota.
All right, my free pick is definitely the true definition of insanity. When you keep doing the same thing and get the same result time after time, and you keep doing it expecting a different result. Well, I'm expecting that this week. I got a double-digit favorite, Ross, that hasn't scored more than 7 points in 3 straight games. But this double-digit favorite is the #1 defensive team in the country. I'm talking about Wisconsin. This team let me down every time we're trying to use them. Now they're an 11-point favorite, and the line's going up against a Minnesota team that beat Nebraska outright last week. This is my don't make sense game of the week. I couldn't avoid it. I didn't want to use it. I didn't want to tell anyone. I'm so embarrassed and humiliated by what the Badgers have done to me already this year. I couldn't use this as a pay game. So remember, anyone out there, if you play this game and you take Wisconsin, you get what you deserve. I got the Badgers.
It's well put. Yeah. I mean, look, you got a team that's lost 3 in a row and scored 7 points or fewer in their last 3 games. And they're playing a team in Minnesota that's won 2 in a row and 3 of their last 4. And here we are, that team that's struggling, can't score. They're against a team that's playing pretty well right now. They're a double-digit home favorite. Well, you know, I mean, I think it comes down to defense. And you make a good point, Chipper. They only allow 15 points per game, one of the best in the country. And Minnesota's not very good defensively. So if Wisconsin's going to wake up on that side of the ball, they certainly got the right dance partner this week, Chipper.
You know, Wisconsin's known for being a bully and running the ball down people's throats. They had 41 yards rushing last week. It was absolutely disgraceful for them. And but they have to bounce back here, don't they? I mean, do they? Will they?
Well, I mean, I tend to agree with you. You know what I mean? It looks, look, it looks crazy. It doesn't make any sense. And usually when it doesn't make any sense, you got to think the opposite way and go with a contrarian approach. It burned us last week because it didn't make any sense. Wisconsin's line last week either. And look what happened. So could it happen 2 weeks in a row? I don't think so. I think I tend to agree with you, Chip. Stanford and UCLA, that's going to be my free pick. Look, here's the thing. UCLA, a 28-10 lead against USC last week in the second half, had everything going their way. They go ahead in the game. They let USC come all the way back and take the lead. They kick a field goal to go ahead by a point or 2 points with less than a minute to play. 1 point, excuse me, with less than a minute to play. And then they let USC in. They kick off to USC with 53 seconds to go, and USC with no timeouts. And somehow the Trojans ended up 4 plays, scored a touchdown, lose the game. You lose your rivalry game, you lose it at home, and you lose a big lead. I just don't know, and I don't see, I should say, UCLA recovering from a terrible loss like that in the manner in which they've lost against a in-city rival like USC, that long history rival. So, and now they're going to play a Stanford team that's won 3 in a row and trying to finish the year out strong after losing their first 2 games,
Right.
going for the 4th straight win. I'm going to take the Stanford Cardinal here, plus the 7 over UCLA. That's going to be my free pick on Saturday in college football. Once again, folks, I'm on Stanford plus 7, and Chip Chirimbes is taking the Wisconsin Badgers minus 12.5 at home against Minnesota on Saturday as well. I'm Ross Benjamin, and for Chip Chirimbes, until Monday, good luck and God bless.